Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. All right, let's welcome Amber to the show. Welcome in, Amber.
Hello, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm glad to have you here. So, why don't we get started first by having you tell the audience listening or watching who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a lot of different things actually. I am a photographer, content creator. I do some video. I run a business that is agency related. So we're a content creation agency. We're adding more services to that in the near future, from CRM to ad management. So we do a lot of different things. And then I also have my own podcast, which is a passion project of mine, called Through the Trauma. And it's all based on storytelling and getting important stories and things out there to the public, getting our voice out heard and getting it out there.
Mhm. Fantastic. I love that. And with all the things you do, the many hats that you wear, sort of that thread that ties through is really the storytelling.
Hmm.
And how you as a creator tell stories. But then I know a big part of what you also do for your clients is you help them as well to be able to tell their stories. And I think it's really important because a lot of times I think that because I'm a marketer by day, and I think a lot of times people just have now gotten to like the buzz is always pain points and the solutions and solving a problem, which is a very important part of the customer journey. But it's also really important to be able to take like all the insights and to tell a story that would be impactful to your target audience.
Hmm.
So can you start by talking about, as we think about our businesses, our lives, no matter where, if we're a business owner or if we're a thought leader, why is it important to share our stories? And then how can we be better at it? And how can we become more influential when doing it?
Yeah. So that's a big question. I think that there's a short answer to that is to build connection, build emotion and connection. And as a marketer, you already know emotion is key. So I think that's the short of it. The long of it is that there's so much in a story. First being our experience, our voice, our what we bring to the table. And I like to tell people that there are there are people out there that can only really hear from you. They can hear from other people, but you have something unique about you that can reach certain people that other people may not be able to reach. That's why I think it's so important for every person to share their story. And there's a difference. Obviously, you have your personal story and then you have your business story, business brand story. So depending on what our goals are, is what story we're sharing. But they're both vital and they're both important. And I think personal stories are a little more near and dear to our heart. That's what we do. That's what I do on Through the Trauma podcast. We dive into people's personal stories of triumph. And I think these are super important for people that need that boost of inspiration or empowerment. But then also there's a lot of power in a business story as well, or a brand story, an origin story of where you come from, how you overcame the obstacles to get to where you are. Those are super inspiring topics that anybody can really resonate with. And it helps them build connection with you and know that you're just another person. We're all human.
Mhm. Yes. Okay. First one, you said there were a lot of great nuggets in there. When you said that the human, yes, because I always tell people, I would always say in marketing, like it's not about B2C, B2B, it's like B to human, like your business to human, like because we're all people at the end of the day. And the other thing I really appreciate you saying is to people that your story is unique. And there are certain people who are out there who are meant to hear from you. Because I think a lot of times, in this world we live in, and of course, like we all want the views, we want the follows, we want to grow the communities. But I always thought when I started my podcast that, if I can just touch one person, right? If there's one person who I'm able to bring people in front of, and that person every week is like, I can't wait to hear the podcast, and they're like, they leave with something of value for their lives that helps them be better. Like, then I feel like I've done my job.
Mhm.
And I think that's important for people to understand, because a lot of times too, we are fearful of sharing our voice because we think no one wants to hear from us. And I experienced that too, because I never thought I'd be doing a podcast, didn't want to do a podcast. But when I first was about to start, I was like, well, no, nobody wants to hear. What am I going to say every week? And I think it's just, I love that you reminded us of that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I felt the same. When I started my podcast, I felt the same. And if it wasn't truly an act of God, like God told me to start it, I truly feel that way, or I would have never done it.
Oh, yes, Amber. Okay, let me just, yes, girl, because I heard it. Usually he tells me things when I'm like in the shower, and I kept hearing like start a podcast. And then every time I heard it, I was like, I'm not going to do it. And then it just kept going with me. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't going to let me be until I went down that path and did it. And then finally I was like, okay, God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try at least and see.
Yeah. And see, that in and of itself is an inspiring story. And I have a different story of how I started mine. I was at a retreat,
Mhm.
and I heard very clearly it was on a private island. I actually was not there on the retreat. I was there as the event photographer for that retreat.
Uh-huh.
And I'm there with a lot of high level entrepreneurs, and they're all getting these downloads from God. That's like the whole purpose of this retreat. And it was like I felt God press on my heart to start this podcast. I had no idea what it was going to look like. We've been now a year into it, and it's been way different than what I thought when I started it, but a huge blessing nonetheless.
I love that. I love hearing those stories as testimonies of, when how God speaks to us. I mean, he does it differently for each of us, but I always feel like it's at the right time for those who believe, that's important. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's a real live example of storytelling.
Yes, exactly. All right. So you just mentioned when you were you talked about the origin story, which we know is really important for a business or just for a person, right? You telling your background story, but you also talk about the signature story and the transformation story. So why is it important? Let's talk about the difference between the three, and then why is it important to use each of them?
Mhm. So the signature story is more like that's kind of your overall story, like your values, your mission, what you're doing in your business that really is the purpose that you're there.
Mhm.
So I like to tell people, like, think of what your purpose, think of what you're doing there, and craft your signature story around that. An origin story is kind of your startup. Like, I just gave you an origin story for my podcast. That is how I started, where it came from, what it came out of. So I think they're similar, but they're both very different as well.
Mhm.
Um, and then I also tell people, like, a lot of what I do is based on transformation, because any great storyteller, there's always like this pinnacle moment of change. So you
Mhm.
have the leading up to it, and then you have the pinnacle moment of change, and then what happens after the change.
Mhm.
So I tell people that's really your transformation story. That is what kind of led you to do it, and then
Mhm.
that aha moment, that epiphany moment, you hear some people call it,
Mhm.
and that has created that change.
Yes. Yes, I love those, and you're right, all 3 are very important to especially if you are someone who's working, in the business setting, you got those, mission and the purpose of your business and the why, like, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think all 3 of those things connect to people very differently, right? Because there are some people who come into learning about companies or businesses and they only want to understand like the why did you start this business, like who is this person, why did they start this business. There are some people who want to know, what do you stand for, like who are you in the world today, what do you stand for, what are your values, the proposition, all that stuff. And then there are going to be people who are very intrigued by like, if this was a moment of, I started this business because I heard from God, or I, went through this in my life and I knew I wanted to give back. So I think they, like you said, they all serve a purpose at different moments of the journey and
Hmm.
the connection points that you're making.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing is they build connection and they build emotion. So
Mhm.
those are the two most I feel like some of the most important things um, when it comes to human
Yes.
just human nature relating to other
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, let's talk about also something that we all hear a lot, but it's still, I think, important. I'd like to get your take on authenticity and the importance of it in storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity is one of these things. I think it's like it it's a must have, especially in the culture that we live in today, because there's a lot of people that portray something and they're not really. And I think we see this a lot with social media. We look at social media, people look like they have these amazing lives and everything is like perfect. And then we strive for that perfection and get depressed when we can't reach that perfection. And I think that authenticity is it's a tool that we can use that shows our humanness. Like we are still human. So there's things that because we are human, there's things that we can relate to other people as.
Mhm.
So if we have somebody that's coming up behind us, they see, hey, you know what? You might have built this business or you might be doing a podcast, but you're no different than me. You're
Right.
just the same as me. And that authenticity helps even solidify that connection
Mhm. Mhm.
even more.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that because I think that especially when you're doing something like a podcast, I think I remember someone saying, "Oh yeah, like we when we edit it, we can edit out all the mistakes or the blah blah blah, the pauses." And I was just like, I don't really care because like it's just real. Like we make things happen, we make mistakes. There are technical glitches, things that but I feel like giving the real of my podcast is that you're going to get all those things because it's not polished and perfect and pretty. It's just me trying to do something good in the world, and that may not always look perfect. It's rough sometimes. Even when I go back and I'm listening to myself, and first of all, I hate listening to myself. Let me just tell you, I never really like to listen to the old episodes. But when I'm like getting it ready to send it to the editor, and I'm like, oh man, I was like, I can go on a tangent when I'm talking about something. Then eventually I cut myself out. You know what? Let me stop talking. But I don't cut that stuff out because it's just the real. And I feel like there are people out there who are like me and who appreciate that. And so it's like when you try to make it too perfect, then it's not authentic anymore, and
Mhm.
and then you build up this like um sort of like I don't know, not that it's fake, but it's like this like character that you can't always look. Can you live up to that all the time? And so I appreciate that. And like you said, and then there's social media, right? Like you go there and it's just, I mean, you go there and you could do two scrolls and hate yourself.
That's true.
You
So
can
true.
you can go there and be like, "Oh, man, I must suck at life." But I think it's important to, always say, have this lens on that it's like, I mean, I don't know, like, I'm just enjoying it for what it is, but I'm not comparing myself to those people online.
Right.
Is yeah,
You can't. You really can't.
yeah.
And the beauty of it is this every person is individual, like they're unique in their own nature.
Mhm,
So I think sometimes when we start trying to be something like I could look at a mentor of mine and try to be like them. And there's certain things that I might take from that mentor that I want to emulate. Like I like the way that they do XYZ. So I
mhm,
kind of emulate that thing. But when the problem comes in when I start crush like crushing my own
mhm.
authenticity or my own uniqueness because God made me for me. And this is a hard thing for me to get over at first. When I first started putting myself out there on social media, on my
Mhm.
podcast, it was like, I want to put on this persona, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which it's a fine line because you want to grow and you want to change and you want to become something, better than what you are. You always want to be that 2.0 or that
Mhm.
3.0. But
Mhm.
sharing your struggles and sharing your things along the way that says, I'm human. I still struggle with these things
Mhm.
and I still
Mhm.
show up. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
maybe imperfect at
Yeah.
times. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And then also too, just oh gosh, wait, when it was there and then it went out. Oh man, let me try to bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. That's oh man, I swear, like it was on the tip of my
I
tongue. I was
hate when that
listening and I was
happens.
ready. I was like ready
Uh-huh.
to also add to what you said. And now it's just like my brain just went like out the window.
Well, I'll
Okay.
say one more thing that might
Yeah.
bring it back. The failure, like sometimes sharing failures. Because I think
Yes.
a lot of times people don't share the failures. They just like to share all the
Yes.
wins.
Yes, and that is one of the things, like, I tell people when you come to my show, please do not come with, like, just, "Oh, I found success and I quit my job and now I'm living as a business owner." Like, talk about the actual journey there and how tough it was. Like, it isn't always nice. It doesn't always feel good. There
Mhm.
are a lot of times that you wanna quit, and then you pick yourself back up, and then you keep going. And I know this is what I was just going to add to it as far as like, even as it relates to sharing on social media and sharing your stories, do it when you feel ready to do it. Because
Mhm.
I think we also live in this place of, especially during the time of like the pandemic, everybody was online sharing everything. Everybody was on TikTok making videos. And it was almost like you weren't going to find success unless you were doing lives or doing videos. And I remember that was a really big struggle for me because I was working with like a business manager at the time. And she's like, well, you've got to get yourself out there. You've got to do that. And I was like, but that doesn't feel right for me right now. And I said, and I'm not saying like I won't ever do it, but it just doesn't feel right for me just to go on live just because. Like I want to go on if I have something meaningful to say, or something like touches me, but like to just go and set like a time to do it every day just because other people are doing it, it just didn't feel authentic for Kyra.
That's right. You have to do it. And this is one of the things I was just meditating on this recently. This idea of like you've heard of making a cake. Like you
Mm,
wouldn't put the cake in the oven in the box, right? You
mm,
unbox it, you pour it in, you put your ingredients in a certain order, you stir it up. There's an order to it.
mhm.
So I think there's an order also to business, and it's like if it, I went out of order in a lot of things. It created a lot of failure. It took me a lot of time. But sometimes there's beauty in that too, because you
Mhm.
learn, if you bake a cake and it tastes horrible, you learn that next time I don't do it that way.
Right, right. And again, but that like you said, but the beauty of it is that you can fail fast and you can move forward. And it's the things that the times when you fail that you come back stronger and you have more like understanding and you come back oftentimes with more, I like to say like clarity and an understanding of like your purpose. Because I did a lot of things wrong when I started my business. I was just throwing stuff. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, yep, I like to throw things at the wall and see if they stick. I'm not saying that it's right, but at least I can pivot from it. or I can make it better. But I will never be caught like just out there like paralyzed because I'm trying to like figure something out or make it perfect because it'll never be perfect. It's supposed to evolve.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does go back to this time, like being in alignment with your time. Like,
Mhm.
is it time for me to share this particular thing? Is it time for
Mhm.
me to do this or learn this skill? Maybe I need to learn this skill before that skill. And just knowing, like having an awareness of that and knowing when is the right time, especially when
Mhm.
you're sharing a personal story.
Mhm.
I work with a lot of people when I bring guests on, they're sharing their personal stories. And I've had people ask me, like, how do I know if I'm ready to share this? And sometimes it's difficult, the things that they're
Mhm.
sharing. It's grief or it's abuse or, and there's other people involved. And there's all these
Mhm.
different factors. And you do have to know when it's right. And I
Mhm.
believe in your heart, if you follow your heart, you do know.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. I agree with you. Okay, Amber, talk about as we were just mentioning a little about purpose. How can through sharing your stories, how can you discover, define, or clarify your purpose?
So that's another one. Short answer, I think is doing. Action produces clarity, and you said it a second ago. And I think that's so true. Like it's hard sometimes to like know your purpose, like define it very
Mhm.
clear until you start getting out and working in what you think to believe to be your purpose. Now, I
Mhm.
can give you some tactical things as well that I believe work. Um, if you're looking at yourself and you're like, I don't really know my purpose, well, what are the things that you love to do? What are the things that you would do if it required, like, I'm not making money doing these things. I just like to do it. What are
Mhm.
the things that you are good at doing? Like, you just kind of naturally have an inclination to do these things. I think those are two great questions to ask yourself when you're starting to figure out your purpose. Um, and then, like, what does the world need from me? Like, how does that align with what the world needs from me? And then when you start doing it, I say just start doing it, start
Mhm.
somewhere. And once you start doing it, you're going to get more clear because certain things are going to feel like they resonate with you. I'm really into feeling. Like I believe in intuition. I believe in our heart. We know everything
Mhm.
we need is inside of us. So I believe that when you start doing, you're going to feel certain things resonate. And that's going to solidify that purpose even more. And you're going to feel certain pieces of advice where you're just like, I can give this person advice all day. And then
Mhm.
other things where you kind of struggle. So I think those are all kind of tactical ways that you
Mhm.
can start to find your purpose.
Yes, I love those, and thank you so much for sharing because I am right there with you. Like I'm all about intuition. I listen. Like if it doesn't feel right to me, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna be forced into it, you know. And I think a lot of times it's so interesting because people always laugh at me, but I'm like, it takes time to get to a place to where you feel comfortable just doing what you want to do. And I look at even as simple things like I work a job where I work remote. And so we have to travel to the city, to the state where the main company is and we meet up and all this. Now, obviously, for people who work remote, you're not around people all day. I mean, I'm not around people when I do, I enjoy the interactions, but by if you got me from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, at 3:30, I'm tapped out because I need my social battery needs to like recharge. Like I need some time. And they were like, oh, we're gonna go do this like dinner together. And I was like, well, y'all have fun. They were like, oh, you don't want to go? I just can't. Like, I can't. It's enough. I'm overwhelmed right now. I've traveled for a day. I've been here with y'all for a day. I've seen more people than I probably see in like an entire month. And it's like, and I'm like, I'm good. But then, and I see other people who like are on the team. And they're like, well, I mean, I don't know that I really want to go, but then I'm going to go because I was like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not concerned about what somebody else thinks. I'm concerned about like what I need. What I know I need is to take a step back and I need to go into the hotel room and I need to sit down and I need to watch TV and I need to let my brain like I just need to like let myself rest.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I think too when you're like a high achiever or you're someone who is doing a lot of things and you're
Mhm.
helping a lot of people, you're expending your energy. I mean, I think to a spiritual degree, like if you're a Christian and you're out there and you're telling people about God,
Mhm.
like you need that time to
Yeah.
re-energize because
Yeah.
it takes a lot of energy. You're not just a social butterfly that just like is getting energized by being there. It's
Yes.
like you're purpose driven. So you're
Yeah.
there to for a reason. You're there to be
Yeah.
a positive impact on the people.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
takes energy, a
Yeah.
lot of energy out of you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is very true. I agree. All
Mhm.
right. Okay. So, Amber, why don't you tell everyone out there what services you offer, how they can work with you, and how they can connect to you?
Yeah. So we still do content creation, which is photo, video, and it's intentional. So we look at your business, we create content around that. We have programs that where we come out and do all of that for you. We have programs where we help assist you in kind of doing that. So we have editors and things on our team that can you record the content, we can make it look really nice for you and package and purpose that for what you're doing in your business. I love working with purpose driven businesses, people that have a heart that's doing something in the world, because I feel like that's how we make
Mhm.
huge impact. And then we also are adding in these services of CRM management, ad creation. So it's been a great thing so far because we've been able to take that content creation and be very intentional about creating that for ads, for um, getting people on your email list, getting people in
Mhm.
your circle, and framing you as the expert. So this is something that right now with these services, we are still testing and learning, and they are newer
Mhm.
services. So we're offering some really great discounts on those. And you can find me at Empowerography. So on right now, we're in the middle of rebuilding our website. Hopefully, by the time this launches, our website will be
Mhm.
up and going. Um, because rebranding, relaunching,
Mhm.
that's always it's a catch-22. It's great because you're
Yeah.
revamping everything, but it's also it's like takes work to get it all up and going.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the website will be Empowerography Files, so it's like Empowerography Files, or not files. That's my Instagram, empowerography.com.
Okay.
Empowerography Files is my Instagram, which we're very active on Instagram.
Okay.
And then my personal Instagram, I'm very active there as well. That's the_Amber_Larkins. We're also on YouTube. That's where you can find the podcast. Whoops. That's where you can find the podcast is on YouTube under Empowerography Files. We're also on TikTok, where we're dropping a lot of little things about healing. It really goes along with the podcast as well.
Okay.
So you can find me on any social media, search up Amber Larkins, and I think I'm there.
Okay. And we'll drop those links in the show notes as well. All right. Well, before I let you go, we're gonna do two more short segments, but I want to definitely thank you, Amber. This has been a fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, well, it's been so nice being here and chatting with you. I thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move into three things with Amber. I'm going to ask you three questions. Helps the audience get to know a little bit more about you. So the first one is a two-parter. It's how do you start and end the day?
Oh, wow. I'll start the day. I wake up super early at around 3 a.m. I'm crazy. I start by going to the gym. I love to work out. I think it sets the tone for the day. And then at the end of the day, I usually am spending time with my kids right before bedtime. So we do a
Mhm.
game night almost every night,
Oh, nice.
and we're like, I'm an Uno champion, just FYI.
Awesome. All right. Second question is what's a goal or intention you've set for yourself this year?
To grow my business and to grow my influence. I want to get on more stages. I want to get in front of more people. I believe that we have the power to multiply our
Mhm.
voice and the gifts and the things that is on our heart to do. And I
Mhm.
believe that God has blessed me with a platform such as my podcast. And an amazing, business and all of the self growth and things that I've gone through over the last several years. Just I believe that I have a vision and I have a purpose and I have a lot to say, and
Mhm.
I truly want to impact others and see the world become a better place. And I think that we have the power to do that.
Mm. Yes. All right. And the last question is, where are you currently finding inspiration?
Man, I love to read. I
Mhm.
used to not like to read, but I love to read. I put together,
Mhm.
I compiled a list of books today. I was going to do like my top 10, and it
Uh-huh.
turned into my top 15 because I couldn't narrow it down. My favorite book, I will tell you, is there's a book called, besides the Bible, I do think the Bible's my favorite, but
Mhm.
there is, it's called Letting Go.
Mhm.
And it is a great book on emotion, managing human emotion. And I think that's a great tool and resource to have in business and in your personal life. And I
Mhm.
personally believe that book should be taught in schools, but probably it's up there.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. All right. And before I let you go, what are three things you'd like the audience to take away from our conversation today?
I would say my big takeaway is this: like, follow your heart. Which we touched on. When it's time to share your story. Be open and transparent to sharing. Sometimes by holding it in, it keeps us prisoners. So really, really try to navigate that and meditate on when is the right time to share, because there's a release that happens when we share. And you also have the power. We hold a lot of power inside of us, and it comes out of this one little thing called our mouth.
Mhm.
So, you have the power to truly change someone's life. You have the power to change someone's world. And I truly believe we have the power to change communities, to change the world in general. So
Mhm.
just by opening our mouth and sharing, and if you have a business, if you can align those two things, sharing your purpose and your vision and the experiences you've been through with a business, it just catapults everything.
Mhm. Awesome. I love that. Well, Amber, again, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing with this community. And you can always come back here in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that. It's been
Mhm.
awesome.
Great. Awesome. Stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.